delighted to have Carl Hooker here with us. He's the author of Learning Evolution, the New Era of AI in the Classroom, and also does a range of workshops and professional development for educators. I really like the one at the top of his list, which is Ready, Set, Fail. I love that title of a workshop, Carl.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hansen, for having me. That's a fun one that was born about kind of the idea that we need to have more innovation, entrepreneurialism in schools, but a lot of our schools are set up for compliance rather than risk taking. And so, like, how do we introduce concepts of taking small risks and also dealing with failure and recovering from it? So, wrote a book, the seventh book, Ready, Set, Fail, was written on that as well.
Wonderful. I really like that because, kids these days, if we see through COVID, social media, um, just the way that things are, kids are often less resilient to bounce back from failure. And we can absolutely help them to do that in the classroom. And if they can gather that response to difficulty and challenge by keep pushing through, keep trying, knowing that failing is okay, I think they can develop that sense of persistence and resilience that they can apply to any area of their life. So we have this wonderful opportunity as educators.
Yeah, and you think about students, most students, not all students, but some get an opportunity to do that with a sports team or an after-school
Mm,
program or something, but not every student is going to be in some sort of sports program. And
mm,
so those students that are a part of a team know what it feels like to succeed, but also fail as a team. So then again, creating opportunities for students in the classroom to do that, whether it be through like doing some sort of breakout EDU or some sort of challenge-based thing where we know they're going to fail at some point, and then the conversation that happens right after that is so important.
very good. Why don't you tell us about your history and how you got here?
So I'm a 25-year educator in Austin, Texas, in the US&A. And I've been, see, I've every grade level, I've taught just about every grade level, but I spent actually the most time with first grade, which is 6-year-olds, believe it or not. And I'm a giant person, so I just try not to step on them every day. That was pretty much my goal. Um, and spent a fair amount of time in that role, but then also shifted over time to like a director of educational technology, which would later become director of innovation and digital learning. We launched at the time it was the first one-to-one iPad initiative from K to 12 in Texas. That is, we had I have 8,000 students in my district, and so
Wow.
and this is 2011. So I don't know if you remember back then, Craig, but it was the iPad had just gotten the camera and it had that big kind of fat charging cord on it. And so for us, it was just the Wild West. We didn't know what we were doing in a lot of ways. So a lot of discovery, a lot of failure, a lot of risk taking. Over time, but that's brought me to where I'm now. So I left the school system in 2019 to be a full-time public speaker and a consultant for schools across the U.S. and also host 4 different podcasts myself. Love to have you on one of those podcasts as well.
Thank
Return the
you.
favor, and do a lot of work with ISTE, which is a big,
Mm.
the big kind of, I guess, the player on the block when it comes to educational technology in the US is ISTE. So do a lot of work through them. And yeah, just been written 8 books, the latest of which is Learning Evolution, the one on AI itself.
How did AI capture your attention and why do you think it's important?
I don't know if you experienced this, but when it was really the moment when ChatGPT came out, November of 22, I remember seeing something on it. Before that, I had been part of a beta for OpenAI, not even really connecting the two, to be honest. I was playing around with like the first generation of OpenAI's, what would turn out to be ChatGPT. They didn't call it that. And so I would do some practice examples. I was invited in on the pilot, did some practice examples, went around, talking to teachers, and I was like, this is coming soon. And they're like, no, it'll never be here. And then when it launched, I was like, that was the thing I was working on, all those years ago. It was probably 2 years prior. And so I was very interested in it right away. And what I also noticed, and you've probably experienced this too, when you host podcasts, is every guest over a period of time, starting in about January of 23, it was the topic that everyone wanted to talk about. And so again, gathering more information from experts in the field, but then also like saying, how can we apply this in education? Much like I did with iPads back in 2011, I just felt like this is happening again, only it's a little bit different because now, because of the pandemic, every student and most of the students in our schools
Mm.
have devices in their hands. And so this is going to affect them in that way too, because they have access to it now.
Mm. What do you think about the concept of the digital divide and AI increasing that?
Yeah, I do think there is some concern there. I'll be honest. One of my biggest worries is here in the U.S. is the schools that are blocking it, and certain states have now come up with policies where they're saying you can't use this or you can't use this, and what that's going to create is going to further widen that divide because I think I always share this example of when kids cheat. We talk about, it's okay for kids to hire a tutor to help them write their paper or have a parent at home to help them with their project. But if we say they use AI, maybe it's they're cheating, so we're going to block AI. Well, what we just did was create an equity because not every student has access to funds to pay for a tutor or to have a parent that's maybe available to help them with their work. And by blocking this one resource or tool that every kid has access to, we've now said, okay, only the kids that we basically what we feel society accepts as quote unquote cheating, even though it's not really cheating, is what we're allowing. And so I think, to me, I think it does. I worry a little bit about that divide. I think right now we're in a period of inequity when it comes to AI. I hope it levels out over the next couple, 18 to 24 months. But right now I'm a little worried about who's going to have access to it and who isn't.
I sometimes feel that people think I'm being dramatic when I say that AI is the biggest equity move we can make for communities, disadvantaged schools, and children that don't have that support that you're just talking about. I think it can really change the game in teaching, learning, and assessment and student achievement.
Yeah, think about feedback too. I mean, the idea that, right now, prior to generative AI, if you wanted to get feedback, you had to give your paper to, like, let's say a peer
Mm,
or a teacher. And now there's emotion tied to that, right? So if a student is not friends with another student that looked at their paper and gave them some bad marks or bad remarks on whatever they did, they'll say,
mm,
well, that's because that person doesn't like me. Or if the teacher gives some sort of bad comment or critical advice, the students say, well, that's just because the teacher doesn't like me. But if you plug your paper into a chat bot or something that basically has no emotion, all of a sudden you're like, okay, I see the points it gave me and I'm going to improve this way. So you've removed a little bit of the emotion out of it. I still think it's important to teach kids how to do peer review, and I think it's important to have that interaction. But I do think it adds, like you were saying, it gives some students an opportunity and a chance that maybe they didn't have before.
mm. Right now, what do you see as some of the platforms that teachers could be using, experimenting with? I understand there's productivity tools and then there's pedagogically driven types of platforms. So, what do you think teachers should have a go at?
I always tell teachers the first thing to do is go in and just try a couple different large language models first of all, and there's a few. I mean, the big players I would say, ChatGPT, of course, Copilot, which ironically Microsoft bought ChatGPT, and then Claude by Amazon is a big one that we're picking up on, and then Gemini from Google. And so I say go through and try each one of those platforms at first, and and sometimes I'll be honest, I use one or two myself on a daily basis to see, like, I want to see if the outputs are a little bit different based on how my prompts go.
Mm,
But for a teacher that's nervous about it, I say go in and try the free ones first. Put in something that's personal. Maybe like, I've got these three ingredients at home. How do I make a recipe out of this?
mm,
Or I'm trying to start a new workout plan. Something personal, and just figure it out. And then once you get comfortable with it, then start saying, okay, now how can I actually apply this to my teaching? And you're right. At first, I think the first attack is usually that idea of that it'll help us with productivity and kind of get rid of some of the minutia that we have to do as educators, whether it be writing out, report card comments or sending letters of recommendation or even emails, which, for the last several
mm,
years, it's sort of been helping. It'll start auto-filling our emails for us anyway. So it's already speeding things up. And then the next step, which I don't think most teachers are at yet, and that's what you just said, the second part of that, which is the pedagogical shift, which I do think means that now they're going to have to look at what are they teaching, how are they teaching it, and then how are they evaluating and assessing it, because that's going to change when you start introducing AI as part of the process of learning. And so if you just say, here's my paper that I've been assigning to you every year for the last 17 years, go ahead and fill it out and send it back to me. There's an opportunity there for a student to say, well, I'm going to use AI to help make it better. And the teacher may not be aware of that. So then as a teacher, you have to think, okay, how do I evaluate also the process of that? Like, okay, where did you use AI? Be transparent. Tell me, did you use it to help you brainstorm ideas? That's fine. Or did you use it to help you edit? Okay, that's okay. But what of this is you and what of this is AI? And I think that's that next thing that I think we're wrestling with right now, at least here in the US, is how do we make that balance of AI versus human when it
mm.
comes to assessing learning.
I've been chatting with Nadeem, the founder of TeachAid from Canada.
Oh yeah.
And it's really interesting because he's actually got the curriculum documents in there, and it's the only one I've seen with the New Zealand curriculum in there
Oh,
from in elementary and also from high school, which is our examination system. And so that's really interesting seeing teachers in New Zealand give it a go and being able to put in their values that their school runs on or their philosophy, identifying there's some neurodivergence in different children and pop that in there and see the curriculum drive this unit plan and then it be tailored to specific students'
nice.
needs. And that's really beautiful to see. Also, I interviewed Thomas from EduAid, one of the founders
Yes.
of EduAid. Great productivity tool as well. An interesting chat how they started. So I just wanted to see your familiarness
Yeah.
with those platforms and other
So
ones that you
those
might think.
Yeah, those 2 I would say, and the other 2 that are kind of tops here right now, Magic School, which just introduced Magic Student recently,
Right.
and then School AI. So there's Magic School, and then there's School AI, just to really make it confusing for us. But what I like about School AI that makes it a differentiator is the people that are. I just spoke to a friend who purchased it for a school district, and what he likes about it is that the teachers get insight into what the prompts are that the students are asking. What's their thinking process, and then again, you can kind of tailor some of it to not make it full scale internet search, but more, we're going to focus on these exact websites, these vetted
Mm,
resources and information. So it's giving kind of a walled garden approach, which I think is always good, especially when you're working with younger students that are just now embarking kind of on the journey. So that's one I've really been excited about. And I think Magic Student, which has just came out, like I said, about a month and a half ago, I think it has similar features. I just haven't seen those yet myself. But yeah, I would say on top of the 2 you mentioned, those are the 2 big players in the space here.
what was impressive last year, in the middle of last year, when it was just really gaining some attention, was Diffit. And it has
Yeah.
the literally anything box on the front page. And so in New Zealand, we have our native Maori people who have this particular concept of maramataka, which is using the lunar calendar to
Okay.
design teaching and learning and assessment and the way things operate in the schools. And so we dropped that into Diffit, and it actually found it and found some really relevant sources, created a great piece of adaptive text. And we thought it's not going to find anything that's going to be worthwhile. Found it, created these beautiful automatic Google documents they could share with students and whānau, family. And it was a great tool to find things and produce all of these different styles of Google Docs that could be used immediately with students. I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah, think about those kids that, the kids that have, there's language barriers or there's something.
Yes.
Yeah, Diffit is a very powerful program for that because you can also differentiate based on reading levels, but one I've been playing with lately, and I don't know if you've seen it, but it's HeyGen, which is
Oh,
HeyGen, and it's a video generating tool. So what I now it's
oh
not
yes.
for yeah, it's not free. But what I've done is you can go in and put about 2 minutes worth of video, and then you use text to basically write out what you want to say, and it only allows you to use yourself. You can't use other people or celebrities or anything. There's lots of roadblocks in there, which is good. We want to make sure that we're not using copyrighted material. But then what's neat about it is it has right now I think 25 different languages, and instantly it'll translate. So it's your voice with your tone, but you're speaking in a different language or a different dialect. So
Wow.
again, for communities where you have lots of different languages being used, as a leader I could then say, okay, I'm going to record my message in English, but then I'm going to translate it into Mandarin Chinese or translate it into Spanish, something different, just so I can make sure I can reach those other. And it's me talking, and it looks just like me. And from the
Wow.
people I've spoken with that do world languages, they've said it's pretty close. It's about 85 to 90% accurate, which I think is pretty high quality for considering how quick it is as a tool.
That's fantastic. So we've talked about a number of things there that AI and those different platforms can do for students or for teachers. Where do you see things in maybe 2 years' time of the impact on students and the opportunities where AI is heading?
I mean, I think you and I have touched on a little bit about this, but the idea, and I don't know if this is such a big thing in New Zealand as it is here, but we've talked about personalized learning for maybe
Mm,
3 or 4 decades now, and I think with the tools, even just the ones we just mentioned in the last few minutes, I mean, the opportunity to have actually true personalized learning where every student can be engaged, they can have opportunities to differentiate based on their interest levels, based on their reading levels, based on their background. I think what these tools will do, if done right, give that potential. And I think probably in the next 2 to 3 years, we'll see some of those opportunities continue to bear fruit. My worry and concern is that we've done this somewhat in the past with social media. We've done this with Google. We've done this with iPads, even where we've started to use it what we think is the right way, and then it just turns into a glorified digital worksheet. So I worry that we're going to use AI just to create more worksheets for our kids, which really isn't the best use of it because there's so much more potential for it
mm,
in the future. So I hope this actually changes what we evaluate and what we assess on too, meaning, and I talked about this earlier, instead of placing so much weight on final products in schools, we should place more weight on learning processes in schools. And I think my
yeah,
hope is that's our goal and that's where we're headed.
love it. Hey, Carl, thank you so much for your time. What's the best way for people to reach out to you, engage you for speaking engagements?
Well, check out my website. It's carlhooker.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Twix. I call it Twix. It's like Twitter X. I can't say X. At Mr. Hooker. I'm still on there. And LinkedIn. You can just look Carl Hooker up on LinkedIn, which is a big one here in the States. So yeah, look forward to hearing from you. And thank you again, Dr. Hansen, for having me on. So I appreciate this.
That's our honor. Thanks, Carl.